Welcome back. We are still working our way through the Rock of Sure Foundation. We're up to the NazActs Book 2, Chapter 9. And when we left off, Nicetas and Aquila, they were telling Peter and Clement and the others about Simon Magus and what their experience with him was. I believe in this timeline, Simon essentially just worked his way in to these Dosithians, and so it's just telling about how he rose to power within that group. It says, not long after he fell in love with that woman whom they call Syrah, and he confided all things to us as his friends, how he was a sorcerer, and how he loved Syrah, and how being desirous of glory, he was unwilling to enjoy her shamefully, but that he was waiting patiently till he could enjoy her honorably. Yet so, if we would also conspire with him towards the accomplishment of his desire. And he promised that as a reward of this service he would cause us to be invested with the highest honors, and we should be believed by men to be gods. Only, however, on condition, says he, that you confer the chief place upon me, Simon, who by magic art am able to show many signs and prodigies, by means of which either my glory or our sect may be established. For I am able to render myself invisible to those who wish to lay hold of me, and again to be visible when I am willing to be seen. If I wish to flee, I can dig through the mountains and pass through the rocks as if they were clay. If I should throw myself headlong from a lofty mountain, I should be borne unhurt to the earth, as if I were held up when bound. I can loosen myself and bind those who have bound me. Being shut up in prison, I can make the barriers open of their own accord. I can render statues animated, so that those who see suppose that they are men. I can make new trees suddenly spring up and produce sprouts all at once. I can throw myself into the fire and not be burnt. I can change my countenance so I cannot be recognized, but I can show people that I have two faces. I can change myself into a sheep or a goat. I can make a beard to grow upon little boys. I shall ascend by flight into the air. I shall exhibit abundance of gold, and shall make and unmake kings. I shall be worshipped as God. I shall have divine honors publicly assigned to me, so that an image of me shall be set up, and I shall be worshipped and adored as God. And what need of more words? Whatever I wish, that I shall be able to do. For already I have achieved many things by way of experiment. So some of these things, I told you in the previous video that my theory is that Simon was Paul's Messiah. When Paul speaks about Jesus appearing to him, Paul's Jesus was actually Simon Magus. So with all these magic tricks or accomplishments or whatever that he's saying he can do, would you think he would be capable of appearing in this flash of light to Paul in the wilderness on the way to Damascus? I mean, it says that he can fly through the air. It says that he can make himself invisible and invisible. I know, Paul at one point was shut up in prison. He made the prison open. Is it possible that some of these things are being done by Simon? Like I said, it's just a theory I have, but I do think it's a possibility. In short, says he, once when my mother Rachel ordered me to go to the field to reap, and I saw a sickle lying, I ordered it to go and reap, and it reaped 10 times more than the others. Lately I produced many new sprouts from the earth and made them bear leaves and produce fruit in a moment, and the nearest mountain I successfully bored through. Now while he was saying these things about plants and boring through the mountain, we were stupefied that he was false even to us, as if intending to deceive us about himself, for we knew that these things were so from former generations, but he wanted to be glorified as having done them. So in other words, the tunnels through the mountains, they knew the tunnels were there for years from former generations, but he wanted to act like he had done them. Therefore, after we heard these things, and others more impious than them, we hastened according to his will, and spread many rumors and told many lies about him, and these things before he would do any of the things that he promised, so that the people would think him to be a god. Meantime, at the outset, as soon as he was reckoned among the 30 disciples of Dositheus, he began to slander Dositheus himself, saying that he did not teach purely or perfectly, and that this was a result not of ill intention, but of ignorance. But Dositheus, when he perceived that Simon was depreciating him, feared that his reputation among men might be obscured, for he himself supposed to be the standing one, moved with rage. But when they met as usual at the school, seized a rod and began to beat Simon, but suddenly the rod seemed to pass through his body as if it had been smoke. On which Dositheus, being astonished, says to him, "Tell me if you are the standing one, that I may adore you." And when Simon answered that he was, then Dositheus, perceiving that he himself was not the standing one, fell down and worshipped him, and gave up his own place as chief to Simon, ordering the rank of 30 men to obey him, himself taking the inferior place, which Simon formerly occupied. Not long after this he died. So notice that Simon, he's a sorcerer. He's this obviously an occultist, very impious person. Dositheus was the person who took over after the death of John the Baptist, is what it said previously. So, assuming that Dositheus was a good person, notice the first move that Simon Magus betook to was to slander Dositheus, criticizing him. This is what I was speaking about. Earlier in the previous videos, that a lot of times these occultists, whether it be witches or in this case a sorcerer or whatever, that's what they start. Like, they'll infiltrate a church, and then they will start criticizing others, saying that they're not, like in the case of like a Christian, like not a good Christian, criticizing them for everything they do, when they themselves, being an occultist of some sort, whether it's the sorcerer or the witch or whatever, they themselves are very impious. Like, they're not even holding themselves to the same standard that they're criticizing you for falling short of. And that's what they do. Like, that's how they turn people against you. That's how they and sometimes they turn yourself against yourself. They make you feel like you're not good enough, or you're doing something wrong, when in reality you're not doing anything wrong. So this technique that's being described here, it's been going on for 2,000 years, and they're still doing it to this day. So just wanted to point that out. Therefore, after the death of Dositheus, Simon took Syrah to himself, and with her he still goes about, as you see, deceiving multitudes and asserting that he himself is a certain power which is above God the Creator, while Syrah, who is with him, has been brought down from the highest heavens, and that she is wisdom, the mother of all things, for whom, says he, the Greeks and barbarians contending were able in some measure to see an image of her, but of herself, as she is, as the dweller with the first and only God, they were wholly ignorant. Propounding these and other things of the same sort, he deceived many. But I ought also to state this, which I remember that I myself saw once, when this Syrah of his was in a certain tower. A great multitude had assembled to see her, and were standing around the tower on all sides. But she was seen by all the people to lean forward and look out through all the windows of the tower. Many other wonderful things he did and does, so that men, being astonished at them, think that he himself is the great God. Now when Nicetas and I once asked him to explain to us how these things could be effected by magic art, and what was the nature of that thing, Simon began thus to explain it to us as his associates. I have, says he, made the soul of a boy innocent and violently slain, and invoked by unutterable adjurations to assist me, and by it all is done that I command. But, said I, is it possible for a soul to do these things? He answered, I will have you know this, that the soul of man holds the next place after God, when once it is set free from the darkness of his body, and immediately it acquires prescience, wherefore it is invoked for necromancy. Then I answered, why then do not the souls of persons who are slain take vengeance on their slayers? Do you not remember, said he, that I told you that when it goes out of the body it acquires knowledge of the future? I remember, said I. Well then, said he, as soon as it goes out of the body, it immediately knows that there is a judgment to come, and that everyone should suffer punishment for those evils which he has done. And therefore they are unwilling to take vengeance on their slayers, because they themselves are enduring torments of their own evil deeds, which they have done here, and they know that severer punishments await them in the judgment. Moreover, they are not permitted by the angels who preside over them to go out or to do anything. Then I replied, if the angels do not permit them to come hither or to do what they please, how can the souls obey the magician who invokes them? It is not, said he, that they grant indulgence to the souls that are willing to come, but when the presiding angels are adjured by one greater than themselves, they have the excuse of our violence who adjure them, to permit the souls which we invoke to go out, for they do not sin who suffer violence, but we who impose necessity upon them. Thereupon NazActs, not able longer to refrain, hastily answered, as indeed I also was about to do, only I wished first to get information from him on several points. But as I said, NazActs, anticipating me, said, And do you not fear the day of judgment, who do violence to angels and invoke souls, and deceive men, and bargain for divine honor to yourself from men? And how do you persuade us that there shall be no judgment, as some of the Judeans confess, and that souls are not immortal, as many suppose, though you see them with your very eyes, and receive from them assurance of the divine judgment? At these sayings of his, Simon grew pale, but after a little recollecting himself, he thus answered, Do not think that I am a man of your race. I am neither magician, nor lover of Sirrah, nor son of Antonius. For before my mother Rachel and he came together, she, still a virgin, conceived me, while it was in my power to be either small or great, and to appear as a man among men. Therefore I have chosen you first as my friends, for the purpose of trying you, that I may place you in my heavenly and unspeakable places when I shall have proved you. Therefore I have pretended to be a man, that I might clearly ascertain if you cherish entire affection toward me. The only person in any of these books that is born of a virgin is Simon Magus. We know that the virgin birth wasn't in the Gospel of the Hebrews originally. We know that it wasn't. It's not in the Gospel of John. None of the apostles in any of the apostolic letters ever mention a virgin birth. Even the apostate Paul doesn't mention a virgin birth. The only place a virgin birth is mentioned at all in all of the received canon of the New Testament is in Matthew and Luke. And in Luke, it's really just one verse. So, if the Gospel of the Hebrews was the original Matthew and it didn't contain a virgin birth, and we know that from various attestations from early church, fathers and patriarchs. So there's very little actual evidence that the early church believed in the virgin birth. The Ebionites didn't believe in the virgin birth. Many of the Jewish Christian groups didn't. Now, later on in the 400s, some of the church fathers were saying that, this group, some of them believe in the virgin birth. So over time, it may have worked its way into their beliefs. But Simon Magus, it says that he is claiming to be born of a virgin. So if you wonder what the origin of the virgin birth of Yeshua is, maybe it came from Simon Magus, which would make sense if Simon Magus, was Paul's Jesus, and Paul, I would credit Paul with founding the Gentile church, especially in Rome. That whole cult came out of Pauline doctrine. So I don't know. I feel like that. I feel like there's a definite connection there. That this claim by Simon Magus, Simon Magus was claiming to be the Standing One, which is another title for the Messiah. So he was claiming to be the Messiah, and he's claiming to be born of a virgin. So maybe some of the beliefs that we have in the received text of the New Testament comes from, maybe some of it comes from Simon Magus. Just a thought. But when I heard that, judging him indeed to be a wretch, yet wondering at his impudence, and blushing for him, and at the same time fearing that he should attempt some evil against us, I beckoned to Nicetas to feign for a little along with me, and said to him, Be not angry with us, corruptible men, O you incorruptible God, but rather accept our affection and our mind, willing to know who God is. For we did not till now know who you are, nor did we perceive that you are he whom we were seeking. So now they're pretending to believe him, but they don't. As we spoke these and such like words, with looks suited to the occasion, this most vain fellow believed that we were deceived, and being thereby the more elated, he added also this, I shall now be propitious to you for the affection which you bear towards me as God. For you loved me while you did not know me, and were seeking me in ignorance. But I would not have you doubt that this is truly to be God, when one is able to become small or great as he pleases. For I am able to appear to man in whatever manner I please. Now then, I shall begin to unfold to you what is true. Once on a time I, by my power, turning air into water, and water again into blood, and solidifying it into flesh, formed a new human creature, a boy, and produced a much nobler work than God the Creator. For he created a man from the earth, but I from air, a far more difficult matter. And again I unmade him and restored him to air, but not until I had placed his picture and image in my bedchamber as proof and a memorial of my work. Then we understood that he spoke concerning that boy whose soul, after he had been slain by violence, he made use of for those services which he required. But Peter, hearing these things, said with tears, Greatly do I wonder at the infinite long-suffering of God, and, on the other hand, at the audacity of human rashness in some. For what further reason can be found to persuade Simon that God judges the unrighteous, since he persuades himself that he employs the obedience of souls for the service of his crimes? In truth, then, they are not souls, but they are demons that beguile him. Yet, although he is sure by these very things that souls are immortal and are judged for the deeds which they have done, and although he thinks that he really sees these things, which we believe by faith, though, as I said, he is deluded by demons, yet he thinks that he sees the very substance of the soul. How shall such a man, I say, be brought to confess either that he acts wickedly while he occupies such an evil position, or that he is to be judged for those things which he has done, who, knowing the judgment of God, despises it, and shows himself an enemy to God, and dares to commit such horrid things? Wherefore it is certain, my brethren, that some oppose the truth and religion of God, not because it appears to them that reason can by no means stand with faith, but because they are either involved in excess of wickedness, or prevented by their own evils, or elated by the swelling of their hearts, so that they do not even believe those things which they think that they see with their own eyes. However, because love for the Creator of the world is sufficient to rescue and save those who love him, the evil one has diffused himself in order to make human beings enemies toward him. Wherefore he has even confuted them, and is for the open injustice of people from among them. For I call witness of heaven and earth, that if it had been permitted by God for the evil one to cause human beings to sin as much as he wanted, then already, even from of old, all human beings would have perished. But God does not grant this to him because of his mercy. For if they were holding fast and trusting in the love of him, all human beings would be rescued and saved, although on account of the sins of fools they would be chastised because of his justice. But now many have been convicted who are enemies of God, and the evil one enters into their conscience and presents himself to them as if he were better than the Creator. But to some of them, When they are watchful, he appears with the illusion of phantoms and promises things more excellent than the Creator. But he will do these same things by reason of the justice that he has forsaken, and it is permitted to him. So maybe this is a good place to stop. This is really kind of getting into this concept of Yahweh's justice, and we tend to forget about that. One of the things that Peter says is that he's speaking about the Judeans. He says that the Judeans, Yeshua said that they should seek after Yahweh's justice because they already knew about Yahweh's goodness. So the goodness is the blessings that God gives us. They were familiar with the goodness, but they lost sight of the judgment of God, the justice of God. So there's two aspects to him. There's this goodness and this aspect of justice. So he loves mankind and he wants to bless mankind, but at the same time, when we sin, when we are unjust toward one another, we're unrighteous toward him, there's a penalty to be paid, and it can't be paid with someone with the blood of some other animal, or even this concept of the blood of Yeshua. Like Yeshua was forgiving sins before his crucifixion, so obviously he didn't have to be crucified to forgive sins. The way you get sins forgiven is you repent. You repent and you tell God, I'm sorry, I repent, I'm not going to do it anymore, and then you stop doing it. That's how you get forgiveness. And there's a combination of that with the water baptism and such, but it's certainly not through shedding innocent blood to get forgiveness. So, there's these two commandments that Yeshua speaks about: to love Yahweh with all your heart, mind, body, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. People tend to forget the part about loving God. How do you love God? Well, by keeping his commandments, by being loyal to him, by thinking good of him and not thinking that he's some bloodthirsty tyrant that just wants you to slaughter animals to him. That's how you love God. And then you love mankind. Now, the greatest commandment is to love God. So if someone is wicked and doing abominable behavior, you may think, well, I'm going to show this person love by tolerating and condoning their abominable behavior. But when you do that, you've forgotten the greatest commandment, which is to love God. You've got to be loyal to God before loving your neighbor. So what you need to do if your neighbor is engrossed in sin is to tell them, hey, you need to repent of that. You need to turn back from that. There was one day I was in a this church. It was a Christian church. It was Father's Day, and a couple of young ladies came in wearing gay pride like paraphernalia, rainbow shirts, and this one girl's shirt had like gay pride little images and slogans and stuff on it. And they came in, and the way they were looking, they had their kind of head held high and their nose up in the air, like they were, it's prideful. They knew what they were doing. They were being disrespectful to my Father's house. So I went to the pastor. The pastor was not a very courageous person. He was, he was a bit effeminate, and he didn't want to confront these girls. He was scared to. In fact, it almost seemed like he was kind of cowering in the back of the church. He didn't want to deal with it. So I dealt with it. I went up to one of the women and I said, "Is that a gay pride shirt?" And she stuck her nose up in the air and says, "Yes, it is." And I just said, "Shame on you. Shame on you for wearing that in here. Shame on you." And you know what she did? She put her tail between her legs and she took off out of that church. She left. The pastor was too scared to even say anything to her. I didn't cuss at her. I wasn't mean. I was firm. But I wasn't like super ugly. I just said, shame on you for that. People need to be shamed sometimes. She came into my father's house on Father's Day and disrespected my father that way. No one else would stand up to him. I did. Because I understand God's justice. Like, I understand the first and greatest commandment is to love God. Some people might look at what I said to that young lady, and be like, well, that's not loving your neighbor. Well, loving your neighbor comes second. The greatest command, the first command, is to love God. The second command is to love your neighbor. You don't put loving your neighbor above loving God. You don't become disloyal to God in order to please your neighbor's ego. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. So we'll pick up next time in chapter 18. Thank you for listening. Shalom.